So good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and welcome to this instance of the Antrea community meeting. And today is Tuesday, April the 13th, or if you live on the western side of the Atlantic, that will still be Monday, April the 12th for you. But in any case, so let's get started. As we were discussing before, we don't have any topic in the agenda for today, but I would just like to take a minute to celebrate reaching the milestone of the Antrea 1.0 release, and giving my congratulations to all the team for this milestone. And once this silent celebration has been completed, as this silent celebration completes, so let's go ahead with the agenda for today. So as we said, we don't have any topic which has been booked for discussion for today. Is there anything that you like to bring up?
I think everyone's still recovering from last week.
It could be. Okay, we'll wait for a few more seconds to see if there is any topic to bring up.
I don't have a
topic. Maybe.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead, Chen.
I wanted to say that I don't have any topic this week, but maybe in next community meeting we could discuss how we could improve the egress feature, enhancing it to support auto IP assignment and failover, etc. How about that? Maybe we could do some investigation these 2 weeks and do a design review in the next meeting.
Yes. What do you mean by egress feature? What does this include? You're saying the IP allocation for SNAT, you mean?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I think probably a quick overview of the feature would be nice next week as well.
Sure.
Yeah, that would be a good idea. And Janjun, were you going to add something?
Yeah, I was about talking about the same thing as Chen brought up. But I was thinking if no other topic, maybe today we can talk about some ideas too. Even we don't have a very complete plan yet.
I see.
Probably let's see if other guys have any other topics to discuss.
No, I don't have any for today. I know that Anna and Kobe are finalizing the design for flexible IPAM, and they would like to discuss it as well in the next meeting occurrence. That could either be the next community meeting, or if there are like more open questions, that will be done in the next office hours meeting. But still, that is something for the next meeting, not for this one. And Antonin, is there any specific issue that maybe deserves discussion from GitHub?
Nothing really comes to mind. I guess if I were to bring up one thing, it's that as I was preparing the 1.0 release, I realized that there is an issue in previous releases where if you enable Antrea native policies on a cluster which has Windows nodes, the agent is going to crash on all the Windows nodes, is not going to be able to start. And that was because of an issue in the implementation of the logging feature, the policy logging feature. So that has been solved in 1.0, but I'm thinking probably we should try to release, to backport that patch at least to 0.13 and release 0.13.2, just in case somebody is using it on Windows and enables native policies.
Cool.
That was kind of like the surprise last minute issue when preparing the release. Yeah.
Perfect. Thanks, Anton, for sharing this. And and what we can add there? I mean, since since we have plenty of time to leverage, I can probably update a little bit on what is going on with the Antrea OpenShift certification. So let's say that from a community perspective, we are now beginning the process of certifying Antrea itself as a CNI solution for OpenShift. This process, it's extremely simple. It's not as convoluted as an operator certification. It simply pretty much requires you as running the conformance tests and verifying the pass. There is also another part about having to support the KubeVirt. Having to support KubeVirt, which is a solution that I believe Red Hat is the only one that uses it, that supports it, which is basically pretty much running running virtual machines in a Kubernetes control plane. I mean, you might argue that VMware has similar solutions, obviously, but in that case, that would be, that would be a slightly different architecture based on ESX. In that case, it's just like a regular Kubernetes control plane where instead of deploying containers, it deploys VMs. I have inquired a little bit with Red Hat and investigated a little bit myself on how this KubeVirt works. And from the Antrea perspective, it should be completely transparent, because as long as we configure the network namespace, then we don't really care whether a container or a VM is attached to that. Nevertheless, passing this test is required for certification. So, we have to justify that it passes. As I was saying, it's just this. The only thing that is a little bit surprising and that I still have to investigate is that it appears that when we deploy Antrea and OpenShift, for reasons that I still do not understand, the agent is unable to connect to the controller because it's failing on validating the server certificate, which to me is a little bit strange, because I was thinking that they're using by default self-signing certificates and therefore maybe not validating the certificate, right? Anyway, this is probably a minor configuration issue that we'll look into it. I don't see any reason for the OpenShift control plane to be different from the Kubernetes one if we exclude the various operators that are running there. And as I was saying, it's a little bit less convoluted than the operator certification process, but for the operator, I mean, as you probably have noticed it from the I mean, you've probably noticed it from announcements or whatever. The Antrea operator is already on the OpenShift certified operator list. This is something which might be good for OpenShift customers, but for, let's say, from a community perspective, we are going to do the same, adding the Antrea operator also to the operator hub, which is, let's say, the entry place for open source, for people who deploy operators from open source. And the operators on the operator hub are not only consumed by OpenShift users, but are also consumed by any Kubernetes users that would like to manage their solution by an operator. And this is why there are also some team members that are working on making the Antrea operator generic enough to work not only on OpenShift, but also in any Kubernetes distribution. And that's it. So thanks for your attention. I mean, let me know if you have any question about the OpenShift integration, the operator, and anything like that.
Yes, Otto, what was your question about the certificate verification? You mean
basically, We are deploying again Antrea 013 with 013.2 in OpenShift, and we are getting the agent init container, which is failing because it cannot connect to the controller because it cannot verify the server certificate. And I mean, I did not review the configuration in detail on this setup, but I'm fairly sure that we are using self-signed certificates. So I don't know if it's just, I don't think there is anything special to OpenShift because, you know, the Antrea controller is a standalone server, so it's not like it requires to have a different, you know, a signed certificate, I believe.
The agent will verify the certificate of the API server, but it may take several seconds to get the certificate from a config map. I feel that may be some delay when you observe these errors, but it should recover after a few seconds.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So I'll have a better look at the logs then. Okay.
You may want to check that the Antrea CA config map is updated correctly as well.
Yes, that's another thing. That's because that's what I was suspecting, that config map is not generated correctly by the operator, and that could be leading to the problem.
Yeah, or it's being overwritten. I mean, I don't know the details of OpenShift, but with other distributions and in other contexts, we've had an issue where, because it's empty in the YAML manifest, and the contents are actually populated by the controller with CA certificate information. If there is some kind of like reconciliation mechanism based on the contents of the YAML manifest, it can get overwritten, and then the agents never get this information.
I see. Okay, thanks for the tip. I'll check that. Okay, so the Antrea CA is populated by the controller, right? That's what you say.
Yeah, but it's what I'm saying is only valid if the issue is the agents cannot connect to the controller.
No, that's exactly what's happening. But
okay,
no, my question was when you say that in other distribution you have observed it being overwritten, overwritten by whom?
No, because until recently, we defined that config map. We create that config map in the YAML until Antrea v1.0. So for previous releases, and it's empty in the YAML, right? The data section is missing, which was on purpose. And then the controller is in charge of populating that data with the CA certificate, and the agent can use that to validate the connection to the Antrea controller. And we've had issues with where some distributions have some logic where, to make sure that important objects don't get deleted by mistake by the user or the administrator or whatever, there's that reconciliation loop, right, which keeps reapplying the manifest in a way. And in that case, you were basically overwriting the config map, which was populated by the controller, with the empty config map, which was defined in the YAML. So you keep losing that CA certificate, and the agents can never see it, basically.
I see. Okay.
I'm not saying that's the issue, but it may be a good idea to do a get on that config map and see if you actually see contents.
That's a good point, because if that is the case, it could be the operator itself that it's been resetting it to the original state where it's empty. So yeah, that's a good point. Thanks. Okay, so thanks a lot for this clarification, and that is all about the operator. I mean, we are probably turning this into an office hours meeting, but that's completely okay, I believe. Any other question that you would like to bring up for today?
I did have a quick question since you brought up KubeVirt. So you talked about namespace and the fact that we don't need to do anything. Does that mean that somehow the VMs like get access to the networking from the container namespace? Because I'm no expert, but it seems like VM networking would be different from container networking. Can you use like these interfaces with virtual machines? I thought you couldn't.
So basically, what I believe is happening here is that they're pretty much treating the container networking as a let's say generic KVM networking use case. If you take as a reference something that they had before, which is called, I think it was called OpenVirt, or something, or even OpenStack itself, the way it works from a networking perspective is very similar to the container one. You create a network namespace, which is not a container network namespace. It's just a regular network namespace, and that regular network namespace, you create a viet pair. And on one side of the viet, on one side of the pair, there is the VM interface. On the other side of the pair, there is the let's say the side which is on the host namespace, on the namespace 0. The difference is that with the KubeVirt, you are not running the kubelet, so you don't have a proper container namespace. So basically, the only thing that I will need to verify once we run this test is that and the Antrea CNI is not going to, to go to access some different paths that don't work with KubeVirt. What I saw about other plugins that work with KubeVirt, like I think it was the OVN, it seems that there is no special code path for making it work in KubeVirt, which makes me think that when running KubeVirt, the agent that replaces the kubelet creates containers exactly in the same way. What I don't know, honestly, because I didn't review the architecture really thoroughly, is whether there is still some shim with the CRI, with the container runtime interface, or whether the container runtime interface is completely replaced by something else. I think it's more the latter, but that part I don't know. So to summarize, I think that the only thing that might be failing is that maybe operating some paths for accessing the container namespace might be different. But apart from this, I do not expect any difference, because the logic at the end of the day is that you create a viet pair. The side that it's in the namespace gets attached to the VM, and the other side gets attached to OpenVSwitch.
So are we failing the test currently, or we're not failing the test?
No, we still have to run the test. I mean,
okay.
we just started doing this with some colleagues at the end of last week. So it's very early. I will be first satisfied to consistently see Antrea running coming up in OpenShift, passing the conformance test, and I think that should not be a problem. And then we'll move on to KubeVirt.
All right, thanks. Hopefully it just passes.
I don't think, I mean, every time that I say hopefully it doesn't happen, but I do think that it should just be a matter of adjusting the namespace paths used by the CNI, the agent. Anyway, so that's all. Anything else that you'd like to chat about?
Yeah, I'm thinking if no other topic, how about we can talk about the kind of version of egress feature in 1.0. Even for the new improvement, probably we need more time to prepare or to talk. But at least for the current one, maybe we can get some feedback from everyone here.
Sounds good. Yes, let's go ahead.
Chen, what do you think?
Sorry, I missed that.
I'm just thinking, could we just talk about the current implementation of egress feature in 1.0?
Okay, sure.
Okay, how about let me, okay, probably I can give a very high level description of the feature. Yeah, maybe I can share my screen. I don't prepare anything, but at least we can look at the our feature gates documentation here. Could you see my screen?
Yes, I can.
Yeah, I think it's mostly by Chen actually, this section in the feature gates doc. Maybe I can quickly go through, and then Chen, you can add anything I missed. So you guys know egress mainly it's about control the SNAT IP of the egress traffic from ports to external network. Before we have this feature, we just do the SNAT with the load IP for any external egress traffic to external. For with egress, we introduce a new CRD. You can see the CRD definition here. Here is just an example of the CRD actually. I think it's pretty simple. Basically, we have this egress IP field that allows you to choose one SNAT IP for your ports, and you have this apply to field that can select which ports to apply the egress rule. That basically means all the ports selected by the egress CRD will be using this egress IP to be the SNAT IP for egress traffic to external network. And in this specific example, you can see we have a port selector namespace selector. I think that's what we support in 1.0. Just port selector namespace selector, just like a normal Kubernetes selector policy. With this egress, it just means for all the ports with label 0 equals wipe, and in namespace with label environment equals port, will be using this 10.0.10.8 IP to be the SNAT IP. The CRD is pretty simple. But in the implementation, actually what we do it's like that policy, we have this controller to compute the span of the egress based on the applied to field. For example, for this one, it will be finally the egress should be applied to all the should be pushed to all the nodes with this port 0 equals web label, right? And then on the agent side, once the agent receive this egress, and it knows it's a local port, and the node should apply this egress rule. I think there can be two cases. In one case, on the local node, you do have this IP configured on one of the node interface. And then in that case, we just configure IP table rules on the node to use this IP for SNAT. And inside OpenWay switch, we will mark all the traffic from the port to external with some, actually we set the pattern mark with some ID. Today we're using 8 bits ID for every SNAT IP. And then inside the OpenWay switch, we set the packet mark with the ID for the SNAT IP here. And then when the packet leaves the OpenWay switch and enters host TCP stack, IP tables has a chance to intercept the packet. And based on the pattern mark, it knows which IP should be used for SNAT. For example, we can say for this IP, if it's on node 1, and on node 1 port, we allocate one ID for it, like let's say maybe ID 2 or like ID 10. And so we have IP table 0 to match the pattern mark with ID 10, for example, and then apply and then SNAT the pattern with this 10.0.10.8 IP. This is the first case. In the second case, let's say SNAT IP actually is on a remote node. It's not on a local node. And in that case, on the source node, we'll just tunnel the packet to the remote node with the SNAT IP configured. And then the packet will be finally SNATed on that remote node with the SNAT IP. But how we tunnel the packets to the remote node? We choose a very simple approach at this moment. Basically, when we do overlay tunnels, we just set the tunnel outer header destination IP to be the SNAT IP. In this case, it would be the 10.0.10.8. And then so as long as the source node can reach this IP on a remote node, the pad will be tunneled there. And on the remote node, based on the again, after decapsulation, the pad enters the open switch bridge, right? For the from open switch, either flow to match the tunnel destination IP. It will be this IP in this case. And then again, since that IP is configured on the node, it will have an ID allocated for it. And then in OS, we just match that destination IP, tunnel destination IP, and then set the pad mark again with the SNet, the ID of the SNet IP. And then again, the pad will be forwarded to the host network stack. Then IP tables can match the pad mark and know which SNet IP to use for the traffic. This is how this feature is implemented today. But you can see there's some major limitation here. First one, we don't manage the SNet IP configuration on the node. So that means users must manually configure the IP on one of the nodes. And if that node fails for some reason, we don't really do failover of the IP. We will not move the IP to another node. Then for all the port be configured to use that SNet IP with the egress, actually the traffic will be dropped somewhere because on the source node, when we do this tunnel to the SNet IP, the packet can never be reached, can never reach the right destination node with the SNet IP. So it will be dropped somewhere. And also there's a requirement that this SNet IP, when it's configured on some node, on one node, this IP must be reachable from one other node in the cluster, because we just already set it to be the tunnel destination.
I do have a question about that. I was wondering why we didn't use the existing tunnel using the main quote unquote node IP to do the packet tunneling and then write the SNet IP on the destination node.
Yeah, I think we do consider that. I think the reason we choose tunnel push is just because it's much simpler. If we go this way, actually you don't need to push SNet IP mapping, SNet IP to node IP mapping to every node. And we don't need to discover the IP and report. If we go that way, probably you need to discover IP from node, and then probably every agent should report the mapping to either some CRD or maybe to controller. So controller will maybe controller can disseminate the mapping to all the nodes, or maybe the node can watch some CRD to know the mapping. But if we just tunnel the pad to the SNet IP, then you don't need to discover the IP and report to controller or CRD, and every node can just based on the tunnel destination to decide which SNet IP to use.
Do you think we could put the SNet IP as a GNIF tunnel metadata?
That can actually, I think Chuan and I also discussed that. But then you need to reduce the MTU again. If you want to
plus I mean it's only for GNIF, I guess. But
yeah, right. I think another reason we go is probably just because probably it's very relevant to our future improvement when we want to do auto IP configuration and then auto failover when you have load failing. Basically, we are looking at Metal LB, have this layer 2 mode and the BGP mode to advertise load balancer wave in the Metal LB case, right? But it also have a feature to automatically assign the IP to one of the nodes. Basically, in that case, it's service load balancer virtual IP. The Metal LB implements it in a very simple way. I just run some distributed protocol between nodes. And then a leader will be elected for every load balancer virtual IP, I believe. And then when the leader fails, probably I'm sure it's called leader, or it's just called active sorry, I think it's called active advertiser or something. But anyway, when that active instance fails, the distributed protocol will elect a new active instance automatically. So in that case, you don't need any controller or centralized data store to be involved in this process. So you can just fail over.
But
it's based on ARP, right? So
right. For our last step, actually, we are thinking, should we also think about similar strategy? Then again, it's pretty simple. We can leverage some existing, distributed election protocol. I think there are a few choices in the open source world with Golang. And you don't need controller, or you don't need to depending on any data store for the failover and the IP assignment.
Yeah, but with this approach, basically you will have a master agent that is owning all the IP addresses pretty much, and when it fails over.
No, actually, if you talk about MetaLB, I think they do that for every IP, for every load balance of web. You have an active instance.
I see, perfect.
Yeah, at least I personally feel it sounds like a very simple and clean approach. But again, if it's instant IP and unless we encode the IP into the tunnel header, then that will require if we go to kernel post, will require the IP to be reachable from any node in the cluster. Actually, I'm not sure you have anything to add.
No, I think you have covered everything.
Yeah, probably in the last meeting, Chen, I can prepare more ideas to share about our next step plan, how to do this IP management and how to handle failover. Yeah.
That would be great, yes.
Okay, so I have still share.
So is there any other question or comment on the egress feature? Okay, so we still have a little bit more than 20 minutes left in the meeting. So if there is any other topic that you would like to bring up, there is plenty of time for discussing it.
Don't have anything else. Actually, I have one more topic. Probably I can also talk about a little to get your inputs.
No, I have actually a stupid question. It's just here my memory that's failing me. A few weeks ago, we had the discussions on Antrea on kube proxy removal and replacing it completely with Antrea proxy. And then Janjun had some recommendations for design changes on top of that. But I don't know if the discussion there is completed or if it's still ongoing on.
You probably can talk about that. I think you are looking at that one.
Yeah, I think it's still going on. Hongliang is still doing some experiment and investigation on the TC approach. Right now he's evaluating the performance impact on if we switch to TC. I think later he will share the result with the team, and then we can discuss whether TC is suitable for our case.
I see. Great. Thanks, Chen.
Do you mean we already have some initial results or still testing?
He has initial results today, but I'm still reviewing it, and I have some questions. Maybe we could share it with you first later.
Got it. but in general, it's promising or maybe ask too much.
I think
kind of
it's
eager to do the. Okay,
yeah,
great.
And another thing I wanted to bring up is whether it is worth to use TC to redirect the traffic from host network to the cluster IP service, because previously we designed in Weichang's design that we use IP set to calculate to match the cluster IP to match the individual cluster IPs, and then mark the traffic. Then we use IP policy route to route the traffic to OS. And in TC approach, it could be changed to using the TC U32 match to match the traffic, but still we need we need a filter for each cluster IP. And but if you remember, we discussed this very earlier that maybe we could calculate the cluster IP CIDR by using the existing cluster IPs, so that we just need one filter or maybe just one route to route the traffic, and this doesn't need to have anything with IP set or TC filter. I wanted to check whether this approach makes sense now, because it could simplify the redirection huge, I think.
If you mean we just use route, it can be simpler than TC.
Yes, no TC, no IP tables, just the one route. Like if we do have three, if we got 3 cluster IPs, then we calculate the minimum CIDR of these 3 IPs, and assuming this CIDR is for Kubernetes services, then we redirect all the traffic matching this CIDR to OS.
Okay, so it will not be a problem if the IPs are non-contiguous, because the resulting CIDR will always be a cluster IP in the cluster IP range, right?
Yes, yes.
For that, you're saying if we go that way, we don't need TC or IP tables at all. We can do everything with route.
I mean,
we still have node port, right?
Just cluster IP redirection, not for node port.
Okay.
For node port, we still need an IP set or a TC, because we cannot just redirect everything. Yeah. Of course, we don't need to conclude in this meeting, just to bring this idea again to see if we could use this approach potentially to simplify our code.
God, I think probably it can be easier to evaluate if we can list these 2 options, then we can compare.
Sure.
I personally feel ideally we just use one way to handle all the redirection. I'm not sure if we, well, you said the load port anyway is different, right? So
yeah.
Okay, actually I already forgot the details. For me, I need to look at if we can have a short summary of these 2 options. Maybe it's easier for me to understand.
Sure, we will put it into a single document, and then we can discuss.
Yeah, and actually I was thinking if we decide to go to TC approach, maybe you can also consider to have an option to use eBPF. I think they can be very similar. I mean, just some simple matching to redirect traffic from host network to open switch, no matter it's eBPF or TC. But we can declare if the
we lost you for 30 seconds.
Oh, sorry, probably this high. Could you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you okay now.
Yeah, I was talking about I think if we do this TC approach, maybe we can also consider an option to use eBPF too. So no matter it's TC or eBPF, just very simple way to matching some traffic from the host network and redirect to open switch. And maybe we can declare we also have eBPF support. So eBPF is quite hot in the community now.
Yeah, sounds good idea.
All right, so yep, thanks. That's a good idea. Thanks for bringing up all these ideas. And I mean, if we end up introducing eBPF, I wish that we will not introduce it only for this little thing, but we'll probably make a wider use of it. But that's something that will surely evolve over time. So, any other question on this topic? So it's not been bad for a meeting that started with no agenda, I believe. So yes, it's been quite a good range of topics that we've been discussing today. So since we are here, is there anything else that comes on top of your mind? Waiting like 15 to 20 seconds to give you a chance to bring up more proposals.
Yeah, I plan to talk about something, but since I talked too much today, probably I will try last time. Or maybe I can, discuss with you guys offline for that.
All right. I mean, if you have any other, if you have some topic that maybe deserves a longer discussion, or you can surely bring it up for the office hours meeting next week.
Yep.
But cool. And therefore, it seems that it might be all for today. And I would like to thank, as usual, everyone for attending, and most importantly, thank all the community and the developer and the user community for, again, for achieving the 1.0 milestone. So thanks again, congratulations, and looking forward to 2.0.
Thank you, bye.
Thank you,
Bye,
guys.
have a good one.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.